John McShea was raised in Chicago and currently shares his time between homes in Chicago's Lincoln Park area and Sawyer, Michigan. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Winona State University in Winona, Minnesota, and currently serves on that school's board of trustees. He also earned a Master of Business Administration degree from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. John McShea is a man of many talents who has worked in several seemingly unrelated fields. They include nearly 30 years in New York City in security sales for institutional fixed income investors on Wall Street. He's also been a professional actor for 11 years, appearing in movies and TV commercials. Beyond that, he's an avid mountain climber, sailor, and cyclist. Adding to that, all of the above, at the age of 66, he authored a book entitled Old Bones, Young Spirit, which is the source of today's House presentation. He will describe for us his solo cycling trip around Lake Michigan to raise money for a cause related to epilepsy, which afflicts one of his sons. The course will focus on finding your higher gear by incorporating the analogy of finding the road less traveled. And adding to that, as you will soon see, he's now an accomplished lecturer. With that, I'll turn the microphone and TV camera over to John McShea to help you find your gear using your old bones and young spirit.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate all you, first of all, signing up and then showing up. It means a lot, although I need a few more people in the front row here. But I hope that you will walk away today with the understanding of what my story is all about, my story of adventure, vitality, possibly reinvention, sprinkled with attempts at humor. Imagine yourself waking up pre-dawn. It's dark. You're in the Upper Peninsula. Of course, it's dark. And you know it's cold because you checked the weather the night before and you knew it was going to be cold. And your legs are tingling. No, it's even more than that. Your legs are barking. This is day 8 of the trip. And it's pleading that you stay in your bed for a couple more hours. But it's day 8. You know you have 80 to 90 miles to do this day. So you know you have to get out, but before you get out, you hear this sound. The sound's not too unlike popcorn popping, but you know it's not popcorn, and it's outside, right? And it's the R word. Now, if you're a cyclist, you know there's 2 words you never mention, ever, when you're cycling. One is FLAT, flat. That never comes up. The second is the R word, RAIN. You know it's rain. And this is not just like the light little sprinkle. It's the pounding big drops that are hitting the window and hitting the air conditioner in the window. That probably was installed in like 1958, right? So you get up, you know you have miles to do today. And first thing you have to do is find your gear that you put aside that's still wet from the day before, and put that back on. You check your GPS, you check your tires, and you roll out the door, and the first drop hits you in the forehead. Boom. Right? You put your feet in the pedals, and away you go. And I loved it. So I have a question for you before we start, just a show of hands. Who has
a question online? A member is asking, what year did you graduate from Kellogg? They graduated in 1989.
86. Yeah. So a show of hands, who has ever in their life ridden a bicycle? That's a good result. Yeah. So hang on here. Okay. Maybe it was a few years ago. You know, I like this, you know, his shoes kind of match his shorts a little bit. It's kind of cool. But yeah, maybe it was a few years ago. You know, maybe it was more recent. Maybe you were on the recent cobblestones in Paris. You know, maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe you were cycling yesterday in Holland. Yeah. Next year, there we go. But my question is, in addition, you know, to that moment when you think in your head, you know, the last time you cycled, you know, have you ever taken off, really without a plan, but just taken off on a bike, and just decided to hit the road, GPS, a few clothes, a little water, a little, and just hit the road? That's pretty much what I did. There's a quote I use that I've heard years ago, and it's, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And we may have seen this, you know, right? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. That has kind of stayed with me. So when I got that invitation to a Lobster Fest party in Michigan City, Indiana, over Labor Day, the light bulb went on. And then I knew the bike trip was on, right? I'm just going to ride to Michigan City and hopefully keep going. That was kind of my plan. So that's how it started. I really didn't have a major plan. You know, you would think you would spend months planning out this trip, you know, and have everything detailed, but life is simpler than that, right? Opportunities present themselves and you just react. But before I start, I have 5 habits, and this is gonna be really quick, but I have 5 habits of that support living fully and aging well. And this is what I have. I think it's important to deliberately challenge your brain to find ways that you stay sharp, whatever it is, learn a language. I even include in this, read an opposing view, if you can imagine that. Whatever it is, challenge your brain, move with intention, find ways to exercise, no matter what it is, whatever your capabilities are, but find something, find your people. Who are your people, right? Find your community. Align with your purpose, and then tell yourself a good story. You know, how you deal with aging defines who you are. And if you have to tell yourself a good story about aging. And there's, you know, Northwestern has a lot of really good stuff on this, about your attitude related to that and longevity. So here's my story. 2 years ago, over 15 days, I rode solo around Lake Michigan, raised a bunch of money for a cause related to epilepsy. And then I wrote a book about the adventure. So 2 years, so I decided to do the trip. I had the plan. And then once I had the plan, I knew I wanted to help people out. So I have two children with epilepsy. They're in their 30s now, but it's impacted not only their lives, but our lives. And so I was able to raise considerable amount of money, more money than I thought. So because of that, I decided to do a blog. And a blog was before and during the ride. It was a daily blog of the people I met and the experiences and the things I saw. And the feedback I started getting is that, man, this is pretty funny. This is really funny stuff. And a couple of people said, you know, this is the first thing I pick up in the morning because it's so fun. And I'm like, and they said, you need to write a book. So that's what I did. So I wrote a book, Old Bones, Young Spirit. The old bones is self-evident. The young spirit, I guess we'll find out. But so I published that book June of 2024. I went through Mission Point Press out of Traverse City, and I was really intent in going through a Michigan based publisher. So this is it. Old Bones, Young Spirit is my story, and I'll get into it. And I say, what will be yours? But so the trip started in Chicago, went around Gary, and I stopped in Michigan City for the Lobster Fest party, as you'll see, and with the intent of continuing on. And I ended up going up the whole coast of Michigan through all these harbor towns that offer just amazing, food and breweries at the end of each day. And but it also included incredibly bad weather, really from New Buffalo all the way up to pretty much Ludington, right? But that adds to a good story. So this is my motivation. We all have our own stories. This is my buddy, little Johnny, who still likes me. So, and I get a lot of questions. You went where, why, what was the cause of getting? I'll get into all of this. What was the inspiration? I'll get into this a little bit. But yeah. So here's my story. So day one, I'm hitting the bike path in Chicago. These bike paths are unbelievable. They have a bike path that goes the entire length of Chicago, all 27 miles, brand new, funded by some hedge fund guys that I don't think they even live there anymore. But it's lovely. And then one thing I want to note here is, if you can see, it's raining. That would be a common theme of this trip. I think of the 15 days, 12 days it rained, and some days it rained the entire day. And I think I had wind in my face almost every day. But again, that makes you stronger, supposedly. So here we are. I went around Gary. Here's the Lobster Fest. My plan was to hang out for a full day with all the my friends and participants, but when I saw the weather forecast for the next few days, I'm like, I better hit the road. So, and that's pretty much what I did. Now this picture clearly was not on the day I was cycling, but I wanted to include that because so many of the harbor towns are just so awesome to ride through, right? This is Michigan City, but they all have great lighthouses, and I try to find a brewery or something at the end of each day, just reward myself for those travels and good food. But again, the weather was just was tough. In fact, in my book, I have one chapter called Finger of God. And if anybody knows the movie Twister, they refer to the finger of God. And it was literally like that. It was such an intense focus storm my whole ride that it was quite memorable. But so this next one is now I'm up in Ludington. This is the Ludington Lighthouse behind me. And note a couple things. One, blue skies. That was nice. And you could tell the wind's out of the south by the dune grass, right? As it's pushing left or right. That probably accounts for why I'm smiling in this picture. So yeah, so I had the wind at my back, and I had warmth, sun warmth, and it would prove to be short-lived, yeah, all of that. So the next picture highlights the town, and I'll read it to you. Welcome to the village of Empire, gateway to Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. So I went up to Ludington, Frankfurt, and I diverted to Sleeping Bear Dunes because I had seen it from a sailboat, but I had wanted to see what it was like on a bike. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's hilly, native growth forests and huge dunes, and it's everything you would hope it would be, except for the rain came. And the rain was so brutal because I had to climb out of there on my way to Traverse City. The rain was so brutal that it was hitting so hard that it was almost like the Russian language. When I was trying to type in to find a hotel in Traverse City, it was like the Russian language, the Cyrillic, was popping up, and I'm like, okay, I'll have to do this at another time. But Big Hills, it was a great day. But I remember coming into Traverse City, and had rained so much that when your pedal went down, it would go underwater, and then that would go underwater, and then that would go underwater. And when I walked into this motel and asked if they had availability, she said yes, and she goes, "Did you ride in this?" I said yes. And then behind her on the screen, it was talking about flash flood warnings in Traverse City. I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I just experienced that. But the next few shots are more uplifting. I'm just going to show some of the paths up there in northern Michigan. This is Charlevoix on the way to Petoskey. It's just gorgeous. The lake is crystal clear. You have all those colored rocks, and it's just gorgeous. This next one is just a county road, and I remember I took this, and then right after this, I ran over a dead porcupine. And if you're cycling especially by yourself, you're looking around, right? You're looking there, you're looking there. Sometimes you're not looking straight ahead. And I hit this bump, and I'm like, what was that? And I stopped, and it was a porcupine that had been run over, and I ran over it. Thank God it didn't. Thank God it didn't pop my tires. But yeah. So but you could see the quality of the roads and just how nice that is. And there were tunnels, and between the tunnels, there were challenging hills, big hills. I think one day was like 2,600 a vertical climb, and I'm going up the coast through Charlevoix and Petoskey, and then I end up in Mackinac City, and where I found the world's largest hot dog. There we go. Who would have thought, right, that it's in Mackinac City? But it's called Wienerlicious, and I'm kind of a hot dog snob, so I had to try their Chicago style hot dog. And although it was more like a distant suburb of Chicago hot dogs than the real thing, it still hit home. It still worked. Yeah. So continue on. So here I am in front of the mighty the Mackinac Bridge. And this was an experience. This bridge was built the same year I was born, but discussions to build it there's probably 80 years of discussions before they finally built the bridge. And I don't think there were 80 years of discussion about me, but so it was built in 3 years and under budget at $100 million. And if you could imagine how incredible the engineering has to be to build in that spot because of the currents and the winds and everything else, it was amazing. But yeah, so it was built in 1957. And getting across was a challenge. And I have a chapter in my book just about that. It was just kind of funny, but getting across, you have to follow their rules, the Mackinac Bridge Authority rules. So, which I did, of course. But so here we are. Here I am in my vehicle. You could see my bike listing to port here, and yeah, the vehicle that picked me up was very reminiscent of maybe a pickup trying to cross the southern border with the Sinaloa gang, driving it was all rusty and it was all beat up, and my guy had in the seat had just a pile of garbage. So I'm like, where do I sit? It was kind of funny. But he was doing his job. So, and then this is just one of the many hotels or motels that I would stay in. This is the Driftwood. And I kind of like this one because it's a home of the Mighty Mac Burger. And now the Mighty Mac Burger, is named after the bridge. How bad can that be? But then underneath it says hiring line cooks, plural. I decided to keep my order very simple. Yeah. So this is route 2 in the Upper Peninsula. I had been warned off by a couple of cyclists. Oh, don't go on that. It's really busy. It's not good. Blah blah blah. And then my Garmin also said, don't go on. And so my Garmin wanted me to go this other route that was like another 12, 15 miles out of the way. And I really didn't want to do that because it was going to be a super long day anyways. So I in my early pedaling, I was close. I'm like, I'm going to check this out. And I get here and it was brand new asphalt, wide shoulder, and there was no traffic. So I'm like, oh boy, let's hit this. And look at the blue skies, but of course that would change during the day. Yeah, but yeah, so this is what I took mostly across the entire southern edge of the Upper Peninsula, and right on the northern edge of Lake Michigan. Here's one of my hotels, the Bates Motel, and I kind of like this. I had to stop, and I'm like, it's exactly what you would hope it would be, right? The light was flickering by the front door. And the signs, one sign says no vacancy, the other sign says vacancy. Perfect. That's what you would hope. So I said, I have to go in and check this out. So I stopped, and it was owned by a Teresa Bates, who she's telling me she never owned a TV, never heard the story until she applied for the license, and the person offering the license says, oh, it's a funny name, and all these people kept bringing it up. So she decided to watch the movie and decided saying, oh my God. She decided to make lemonade out of lemons and make one room the cycle room, where it's bloody handprints and feet prints all over the room. But that's the premium price of $75 a night, which tells you what I paid. I didn't stay there. I stayed in another room. Yeah. So, sometimes stories like that are hilarious when they're actually true like that. But and all these rooms, all these motels had signs. Most of them were handwritten. This one says no marijuana in rooms, no smoking, marijuana on premises. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it's hilarious that they all had different, mostly handwritten signs. Here's another one. To operate television, please turn down the light switch. Now the light switch was over right by the door. The TV's over there. I could never quite figure that one out. But this one, I remember they should also have had a sign that said that the TV only gets one channel. Now this was a Saturday, and I was hoping to get my ride in and then watch college football because it was in September. And I was all hopeful, and then I realized that all I got was the Hallmark Channel. And it was some show from 1986. That wasn't that bad, actually, but my options were limited, and they could have given me a sign, actually, but they didn't. Here's another one. I find this humorous. On, off in large letters and volume. Okay. So, and it's on the opposite side of where you need it, right? So I kind of call this my Upper Peninsula Mensa test. Yeah, that, you know, all you do is turn it over and hit the button. I mean, I didn't quite get that one, but it's just fine. Signs in all the motels. So, you know, here's the FLAT part of the story. You know, I would end up having 4 flats, believe it or not, but this was on a Sunday, had a flat. I was about a quarter of a mile from this gas station, and I met my guardian angel, Mary, who saved me for a variety of reasons. But it was really cute. But yeah, so you could see the rain right by the bike. And then that just highlights, you know, I'm at a diner, you could see the rain all over my glasses. That's typical of the trip. Yeah, and when you change tires, that's kind of what happens too. You know, your hands get dirty, but you know, staying clean was really challenging. You know, and this is kind of what you know, especially when it's raining, this is what the bike looks like, right? You have you know, this road grit everywhere. You have it in your mouth, your ears, you know, down your shirt, you know, all over your bags. You can see my trusty flip-flops, which come in valuable on these trips. And it's just dirt everywhere. You know, but there's fun things to see along the way as well. I mean, here we have, I passed, you know, Sasquatch. He was a little stiff, but you see these things, and I experienced 3 different dinosaur skeletons. Right, they're probably fake, but one, the dinosaur was in a woman's dress and party beats. I just didn't take a picture, but I should have. Yeah, so you really experience a lot of fun things along the ride. You know, I have a story about this 10-point buck that was running along with me in the book. That wanted to go left, and I just kept speeding up to see what it was going to do. You know, thinking, you know, if it goes left, it's probably I'll be calling my wife, had some, you know, emergency care somewhere. But yeah, so it's amazing the things you just kind of encounter. So the next couple of photos are just, you know, morning sunrises. This one is in the Upper Peninsula. The next one is in Menominee. Just gorgeous mornings in the morning, you know. Yeah, this was kind of a surprise. So I have friends connected to the charity who had reached out to their friends in Green Bay for NBC, and they called me up the day before and said, would you be available for an interview? I'm like, yeah, sure. So here I am in Green Bay, and they're doing this quick interview of me and the ride, and, you know, my age, and, you know, did my butt hurt, you know, all those kind of things. And no, my butt didn't hurt. But yeah, and then they ended up showing that day. So that was kind of fun. You know, on the news, I didn't see it, but I think I got a link to it, but yeah. So that was kind of fun. But so here I am in Green Bay, and I pass again. I never booked a room in advance, really, the whole trip. And I passed this place. It was called St. Brendan's Inn in Green Bay. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but I'm like, oh my God. Now, St. Brendan is an early monastic saint from Ireland and patron saint of wanderers searching for the Isle of the Blessed. Now, being a wanderer myself, I'm like, this is meant to be. But I was also in the town of Green Bay, so I was very skeptical of ever finding the Isle of the Blessed in Green Bay. That's just like Chicago Bear joke. Sorry. So I knew I needed to keep searching for that, but yeah. So this inn is like, and this bar was like something you would experience in Dublin. It was awesome, and the food was great. And I had a plan to meet my nephew, who lived outside of town, and have him meet up for dinner. But I had an even better surprise. So my daughter, my son-in-law, my grandson, all surprised me. And yeah, as I'm sitting down for dinner, I hear this, Papa, Papa, and I see him come running. I'm like, and after a couple weeks of not really, hearing voices, only the voices in your head, of course. But that was amazing. So we drank a few Guinness that night. That was really fun. So this is the typical picture of my bikes in the rooms. Now, there's kind of a thing that it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell, right? The manager knows exactly what you're doing, right? But they don't bring it up. You don't bring it up. In fact, once a manager just handed me a bed sheet. No explanation, just handed me a bed sheet, and then I put it on, the floor and put the bike out over there. But they kind of know I'm bringing the bike into their room, and they seem to be okay with it. But so the last night on this trip is in Kenosha. It's Captain Mike's Beer and Burger Bar, and I saw this, and I'm like, then I booked the hotel across the street. And that was on the last night before I got to Chicago. And again, it's pouring rain. And it was pouring rain the next day too. But yeah, I just sat in there and kind of told the story. And there were people, in brewer caps listening, and we were going back and forth. And it was really sweet. They just, gave me $20. They put this towards the charity. So it was kind of, it was a very fun night. So this is my book. Old Bones, Young Spirit. It's been a blast. I've had more surprises related to this book than I could have imagined. So I have a little internal competition or recognition of the coolest places my book has traveled, and it includes somebody bought it in northern Alaska. A friend took a picture of himself on the TGV out of Paris and held my book up. A friend of a nephew took a picture. You remember the famous swords in Baghdad? Those swords as you enter the town of the city of Baghdad. He's standing there holding up my book. And probably the coolest was I have a guy who I climbed with years ago who's done Everest and other. He was climbing K2 this year, which K2 is like, people say it's harder than Everest. It's not as high, but it's more difficult. And he took a picture of my book at base camp. So all of that just kind of, makes you feel good. So so what that's all about is Danny is named after Danny Stanton. He was a 4-year-old who passed away in his sleep from a seizure. He was a neighbor. And also I told you our personal story. And so we've been involved in the charity. And like I said, we raised a bunch of money, and all the money that I raised goes strictly towards these seizure monitors for these families. So if you can think about the impact of that, where their lives are devastated, and now at least excuse me here, at least now they have a tool that can help them get through the night and get some sleep. So that's it's been pretty meaningful. So, and because of this story, in addition to NBC Green Bay, I've been on TV. I've been on Good Day Northern Michigan. Has anybody been to Cadillac, Michigan? Yeah. So this is buried away in the woods of Cadillac, Michigan. And you feel like going there, you feel like you're going to a CIA safe house or something, it's but it was really cool. And so I had an interview there. I was on Fox Chicago with the Chicago affiliate, talking about it. And I was on radio with Ron Jolly out of Traverse City for about like a half an hour. That was really fun. And so all those things are kind of just amazing experiences. And I'm just gonna, bore you with this here a little bit, but the reviews are also meaningful. I'll just read this real quick. What a fun and inspirational journey. I felt like I was literally on John's bike, experiencing the beautiful scenery, challenging weather, and the quirky interaction with people and animals along the way. The history of each town and region also provided a rich understanding of the culture. The photos were both amazing and fun. The added bonus is the ride helped to provide Danny Did funds, a great cause. I keep active on the bike, but this provides motivation to look to expand to my own bike packing mission in the future. Great adventure and reading. So that's one. And you know what? You don't need to be a cyclist to enjoy this story. It's just a fun story. So the journey continues. So a couple of weeks ago, I have a friend who lives in Provence, and he was the one who had my book on the TGV, right? And he showed it. And he earlier, a few months ago, he said, we're doing this ride in Europe if you want to come. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I ended up riding from Munich to Salzburg, and then across the Austrian Alps and the Italian Alps to a city close to Venice and the Adriatic Sea. So that's what I'll just go through some of these pictures really fast, but that's kind of what that's why I said the journey continues. So these are the signs we were looking for, and it was Cyclovia, Alp, Adria, Radweg. Now, Cyclovia is the Italian version of this path, not path, but this route. And the Alp, Adria, Radweg is the Austrian German version of that. But these are the signs we were always looking for, right? So this just gives you a couple ideas of just what, this is heading south out of Austria, out of Salzburg. There's a few bumps ahead of me. But you can see the roads and the bike paths are just the best I've ever been on, Some of the ones in northern Michigan are really nice, but this is super special. Here's another one looking south. That's the Salzach River. And again, so some of the bumps. But it was just gorgeous. I don't know how many bridges we went across, but they were all just amazing. Another one. This is a crushed limestone path. Look how nice that is. I mean, yeah, very fun. Great weather those days. One more. So this is in a fairy tale village in Austria called Bad Gastein. This is my buddy from Provence, and this is another one of the same town where this waterfall river cuts the town in half, and you can see the hotels, and it's just every turn was like a postcard. It was just amazing. Here I am at the Austrian-Italy border, and you don't see the Italian National Guard standing just to my left, I guess, this way, and they weren't smiling. They were pretty serious. They wouldn't let me take their picture, and they had some really big weapons. So I'm not sure who's going to invade from Austria to Italy. I mean, that's happened, but that was a while ago. But yeah, anyways. And so right after this, there's a sign like 17% grade, if you could imagine that. And you got all this weight on you, and it's like, yeah. So This is, the caption of this is, I think we go right, right? Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of the guys I ended up cycling with 3 other guys. One guy was from Vancouver. There was a German guy and then my friend from France. So we had it all covered. Except for only one person spoke German. Yeah, or Italian. So we experienced lots of tunnels. And if you could imagine how cool this is, these are old train tunnels. And on the 4th day, I think we went through 20 tunnels. In fact, just to kind of describe what they're like, because on the path, you have huge waterfalls falling on your left, and then this huge river valley fairy tale towns down there, and it's sharp stinging rain, but it doesn't bother you because it's so cool. And these paths are strictly for bikes now, so it's really cool. But we went through about 20 of those, and on the 6th or 7th, we're coming around to go in another one, and all these sheep come down the hill. And it had to be over 200 sheep, and they're all tucking into the tunnel before us. So we're like, we catch them, and we're like, oh God, now what do we do? Because we can't turn around. So we literally kind of walk or pedal 2 miles an hour for a kilometer through the tunnel until we were free. But yeah, it's the tunnels are made. So this was the last night in the Italian Alps, and notice the pristine lake and just the beauty of all this. It was amazing. Now I have there's signs also in Europe. And it takes a while to kind of look at this and figure out what they're telling you in this. All I know is that I would think twice about doing anything to this gentleman. And I'm assuming it's a gentleman. This gentleman's lawn. Yeah. I saw that and I go, did I really just see that? Yeah. Yes.
We have an online question. The question is, I saw you rode a road bike in Michigan. Did you ride e-bikes at all?
Yes, not on my trip around Lake Michigan, but in Europe I did. And I'm kind of a purist. But the other 3 guys were all using e-bikes. And I was gonna ship my bike over, and it was a lot more expensive than I was hoping it would be. And then my brother-in-law, who lives in Munich, says, I have a brand new one. And I said to me, I'm like, oh, it's expensive. Good. So I checked it out, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just use this. So yeah. So I've come around. Yeah. So we'll take that picture off. Yeah. So this is the last day, and you can see we're drinking wine before we finished, and when in Italy, So it kind of shows you a little bit about that. It was at some wine bar, trattoria thing. But it was in Udine, Udine, really cool town. So I finished the trip. 2 days later, I'm at Oktoberfest with my brother-in-law. That's what that's all about. I just had to throw that in there. And what this is on day 4, which was the most amazing cycling day of my life. When I'm up in the Alps, going through the tunnels and the rain and the waterfalls, and I get a call that night that I was a grandfather then. Yeah. So this is a little Declan Thomas's hand, and I'm gonna see him over Thanksgiving again. So just really quick, what does living fully mean to you? We all have our own definitions, right? Giving back, good health, inner peace, friendships, right? All of the above possible, right? So, that's what we're all seeking, and again, back to my 5 points, deliberately challenge your brain, right? New language, strategy games, read an opposing view, storytelling, right? Move with intention. This is Railroad Trail that was just put in place by my house. But find ways to move and exercise and stay young. And it's not just for your legs, but it's for your brain as well, as we know. So find your people, find your community. I was walking the beach yesterday by my house, and there were like 10 dogs running towards me. And I asked one of the women, I said, what's going on? It's like, oh, this is our beach dog walking group, right? So no matter what it is, have a group. That's what this is all about. Flex your courage muscles is what I say. Align with your purpose. We all have things like this: mentoring, volunteering, caregiving, activism, and then tell yourself a good story. The stories we tell ourselves about getting older, good or bad, shape our biology. So last, you never know who you're going to impact. So yeah, that's a little Ginny. And she's kept our board. So yeah. So anyways, that's my story. It's been a fun ride, and I love that you showed up, and I hopefully you found it interesting. Yeah. And the book is available on Amazon. It's done pretty well. I think the last time I looked, it was rated 4.8, so it's still pretty well received, and it's been really a fun ride. So I have that, and I'm open for questions.
I got a question. What was the mechanism? What was the mechanism for getting pledges or for raising this money when you went around Lake Michigan? I mean, did you give pledges ahead of time before you
Yes.
got to these towns?
Yes, yeah, no, I didn't go that route. I just did outreach, and then I put it on Facebook and Instagram,
Oh,
and
okay.
emails, and
Yeah.
like I said, it was pretty overwhelming. I was really surprised on how much.
You didn't have to go around each city recruiting money.
No,
Yeah.
but it's funny when I told that story. Like, for example, I was up in Manistee in the UP, and I was waiting for a bike shop to open, and then he asked, tell me about your jersey, because it was the Danny Dibb Foundation. And so I told him the story, and the day before I had that flat, and of course it was a Sunday, and I had 2 bike pumps and neither worked. And I just used one like a week or 2 ago. So I'm like, oh God, and it's Sunday, and it was that guardian angel Mary who basically saved me, but she showed me where there was one of those fixed bike pumps in the park, and I found it and was able to fix things. But I went into the bike shop, and he asked, and then I was buying the new pumps, and I said, okay, how much do I owe you? And he said, no. I go, what? He goes, no, we support good causes, and this is a great cause. Yeah, so it's those kind of things,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any other questions? One moment.
Yeah, if you could just pass it around for Tom. Yeah.
Getting back to the fundraising, how did you do it? Like so many dollars per mile that you completed, or just?
I really didn't. I mean, I could have, but my fear, if I did that and I ended up in Michigan City and stopped, then it would be a little disappointing. No, it was just a pure link to the charity, under my name, and yeah, they were telling me, man, this is like, take it off. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Did you ever take a spill on your bike or fall on your bike over the,
Not on these trips, no.
okay.
No. I have. Yeah, I've been hit by a couple pickup mirrors twice, which hurt. I've gone over my handlebars once, But no, on this trip, I don't think it was even close. The worst cycling was probably at the time was coming into Ludington because it was pouring rain again. And the road was all crumbly with no shoulder, and it was pretty hairy just for a few miles. And that's where I had my first flat, by the way. Yeah, because of the roads. But no, I'm kind of mindful, and I didn't mention, but I've been riding all over the United States for many years, right? So I've done trips from Seattle to Portland. I've done Montreal to Portland, Maine, which finished 2 days before 9/11, if you can imagine that. And I'm in Portland, Maine, all over the Midwest. Yeah. So it's just, and I ride in Chicago, so you always have to have your radar high. Yeah.
Questions from this side?
Were you anticipating the rain? And if so, did you change your tires before you left home? Because
I-
you're riding a road bike, skinny little tires.
I did change my tires actually beforehand. But it wasn't really because of that, but I just knew that.
A little more tread or just?
Yeah, I
or
just went,
tires?
instead of having the really skinny 23s, I think I went to 28s or 32s. I can't remember on those. But definitely wider, because I knew there would be periods where I'd be on crushed limestone. So
And what about, do you have disc brakes for rain riding?
that's an old trick.
I had an old Trek but I also got a cyclocross for when it's
Yeah.
anticipating rain. And it
Yeah,
made a
no, I have
big
disc
difference.
brakes on my Chicago bike now. But then that bike I had bought when Lance Armstrong was popular. So it was
I
quite.
think I have the same bike. Is it a Trek 5200 carbon fiber?
5,500, yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
So yeah, it was a long time ago, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have two questions on Zoom. One is, what was the most miles you did in one day?
Okay, the most miles were from Saint Ignace to I believe it was Manistee. That was about 105 or 106 that day.
And then the other one is, have you done Ragbury or
Oh,
ride,
right.
yeah, or ride the Rockies?
No, neither. I've had lots of opportunities to do Ragbri, but I just haven't. That has a whole different, not that I'm against it, of course, but that is a big party ride, and it never fit my schedule in the middle of the summer. I would love to do Ride the Rockies, so something like that. No, as long as I can. Yeah.
Any more? Oh, yes.
So I don't pretend to be a rider like you are. Many people in here are, single digit miles and
No,
occasion
that's all good.
bike
Yeah,
paths and
of course.
roads and all. But I always notice that I can drive even around near where I live in Park Township here. I can drive by something for years and never notice it. But when I'm on my bike, suddenly things are brand new, or I notice things. Do you have that experience?
Oh,
Is that
course.
one of the
That's
best
a great
parts?
observation, and I kind of even mentioned in the book that you stop at signs that you would never stop in the car going 70 miles an hour. And when you're going 16, 17 miles an hour, you stop, you read the sign, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And you kind of file it away or make a note to research it. In my book, there was a lot of things like that about Native American heritage around the whole lake. And, when they were there, which tribes, who took over whom, Mackinac Island, just read about that sometime and see, between the French and the British and the several different Native American tribes back and forth until the Americans got it. And there's even a funny story about Mackinac Island. It was, people don't realize it was the second national park in the United States. And people were like, what? So it was a national park, but then they didn't maintain it. Michigan didn't maintain it. So they pulled it. And it became a non-national park. But it was the second one after Yellowstone. And they pulled it. I love all that stuff, and I incorporated some of that you know, I have some funny stuff about like, you know, where Skylab fell out, you know, some Russian spacecraft lost a part and landed like in Sheboygan, I think, or, you know, it's like crazy stuff like that. But it's, you know, it kind of makes the trip when you read stuff like that. Yeah.
And then maybe if you walk some of those areas, you'd see even more than you do on your phone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
thinking, just gotta get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Questions from this side? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, as long as you had the experience on Highway 2, and that was a beautiful shot of it all clear.
Mhm.
And did that day, that long day, did that get busier? Or did you really just have a nice quiet day in September?
No, it got busier, and it was pouring rain
Ah.
at the end. So you do get some of that wash, you know, but yeah, you know, at some point there's not much you can do
So it's,
because you really, it's really hard to get off of that because then you gotta, you know, it's like this line like that, and then you gotta go way up and around, and you just can't do that, you know. But it was funny. I would always have. I was just thinking about the different motels I stayed at, and a lot of them were just an eye check, you know, when I got there, you know. And there were two that I got there, and I'm like, I'm not staying here. So you can only imagine how bad those were. You know, yeah, you meet some really interesting motel owners and stuff. Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Rose- oh,
I had a boss when I was stationed in Illinois who was a runner. And he ran every day, 7 miles, rain, sunshine, ice, snow. He didn't care. And his feet didn't have toenails. He ran so much.
Oh, wow.
And he would go through a pair of sneakers. I think it was every 3 months he had to buy another pair or something stupid. But I don't particularly like getting wet. He didn't care apparently. You don't care apparently, or did you?
You would rather it wasn't raining. But no, it didn't really bother me. Even like when I explained it when I was in the Alps. And you know, it was like a cold pelting rain. It was almost like rain, snow kind of combination. I told the guys I was riding with at night, this was some of the greatest riding I've ever done. And they're all like, really? The weather didn't bother you? I'm like, well, that was kind of a non-factor. It was just the visuals I'm seeing, you know, and, you know, views and, you know, oh my God. Yeah. So I think, yeah, like I said, you'd rather it not be raining, you know, but some days, you know, you're riding also in like 95 degrees and, you know, you would welcome that rain. So, yeah. Yes.
So for someone who's not a rider, recreation, how do you get more into the sport? I mean, what's your journey? How long you've been riding? How do you get more serious about it?
Well, I've been cycling since I turned 30. And it was strictly because I saw a picture of myself and it wasn't very flattering. And I had already had 2 of my 3 kids and I'm like, okay, I need to raise my game. But that, I encourage people to start anytime. I think you have to work on your balance, right? But if you have to find good cycling routes, either great county roads, but more importantly, maybe bike paths, that's what I would do, right? And start with a few miles and just, again, if you could find your group that has a common theme, kind of likes the same mileage and speed, and time that you can get out. Yeah. I don't think you're ever too old to do that. In fact, I ride with a group of guys in Chicago that are kind of between 62 and 74. But I've ridden with this one guy who's 82 and he's strong. And so it's, you know, I don't think age is, you know, I think age is one factor, but not all of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Riding around Lake Michigan, being alone with your thoughts
for a good part of it. Did it change your perspective on anything or how you viewed things
Yes,
differently?
people ask, well, why would you want to go by yourself? And yeah, I've done a bunch of group rides, right? And that dynamic is totally different as you go by yourself, right? If you go with a group, you all kind of hang together and, you know, yada. You go by yourself, you're forced to engage. You're forced to talk to people, and that's really not a problem for me. But you just kind of, you do tend to reach out, right? And explore and see things, and you don't, the only person saying no is yourself. So you know, you just, yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but did it change my perspective? Yes, it changed my perspective in the sense that I just, I knew people were good, but it kind of reinforced that, right? You know, I met all these guardian angels, all these people that were just like, you know, they didn't have to, you know, give me the $20 bill or, you know, give me a free pump, you know, or whatever. You know, I was trying to get that guy's name and I called him up and he totally denied he did it, which is kind of funny. Right. So I never had his name for the book, but, yeah, so I would say it's that. It just kind of reconfirmed some good things. It allowed me to see, I was really hopeful to see what Michigan was all about. Northern Michigan, I mean, the hills were killers. You know, I remember having one hill, and I'm trying to remember where it was now. It might have been on the way to Empire, that it was like a full mile climb without stopping. And you're going around left, turn, right, turn, left, and I'm like, oh my God. You know, and I've got my bike's in its lowest gear and I'm out of the saddle. I got those panniers on the back and they're swaying like I got you know, a child asleep on the back of my bike. You know, it's like, yeah. So all of that, that experience was confirmed what I hoped about Michigan. You know, my next ride will probably be the northern slope of the Upper Peninsula with all of that, which is supposed to be gorgeous. Yeah, so.
Questions?
Here's one. Tom, they're putting you to work here.
Part of the job.
John, you have the word gear in the title of your talk. That's supposedly a reference to
Oh,
the
gear.
gear your bike is in.
Yeah.
But what gear did you take on this trip, especially electronics?
Well, what I meant is the cycling gear, like the spokes, like, you know, that gear. It's just, it was just kind of a play on words about finding your higher self as part of this, you know. Uh, you know, and to your question even about, so I stopped like at the one of the Native American museums that was up in St. Ignace, and that was really cool. And you know, so I just kind of, so much was hard, you know, felt. But you know, exploring and having curiosity and a sense of adventure does kind of raise your game, you know, puts you into a higher gear. I'm convinced. It's good for the brain, it's good for the legs, you know. Okay. Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So, again, I had a 20-year-old Trek bike, you know, carbon fiber, but it had lots of miles. I had 2 panniers. Those were the saddles on both sides and a rack, and I had a little bag on top. But that was pretty much it. And then so I had one pannier of just cycling stuff, and I only had 3 whatever copies of it or whatever. And I had the other one was for food, more water, and also just clothes to change into. So it was very simple. I had no camping. You know, when I told my wife about this trip, and she said, "Are you going to camp?" I said, "No, I'm too old to camp. I'm not camping." She goes, "Where are you going to stay?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to stay at motels, you know, Americana." And she's like, "Yuck." You know? But if you camp, then that's that's a lot more equipment. So I didn't have any of that. I had a tarp and a few things, just emergency stuff, just in case. Especially for the UP, but I never had to use any of them. I had a Garmin and a Google Maps for bikes. And I used both. And I used both concurrently, and it was funny how often they were off. Especially the Garmin. It got so bad, especially in the UP, that I named my Garmin Karen, because she kept consistently would be saying, in 200 feet, take a right. And I look over and it's like this dirt, it looks like a minefield. I'm like, I'm not going there, and I finally had to turn Karen off because it was like, come on, Yeah, she had one where, she's saying, you have to go up 8 miles and then take a left. And I get there, and again, it's a road totally under construction. So I had to turn around and double back, Yeah, but I found Google Maps for bikes great. In fact, I used that in Europe. Too. Yeah, that was really accurate. It was better than what the European guys were using. But just a side story, it was kind of turned out to be, I don't know if it's funny, but it's true. On the third day, the German guy who organized the whole trip, in the morning, because they always have great breakfasts there, says, I'm going home because I have an eye infection. And we're all like, the other 3 don't speak German or Italian. And we're like, oh God, okay. But we made it. We figured it out. Yeah, but he took off. The guy that organized the trip took off. Yeah, so that was kind of funny. Yeah.
More questions? Another one?
When I bike, I don't really like hills very much because I know even if I'm going down the hill, there's one I have to go back up again.
Exactly.
But the thing that I get afraid of the most is going down a hill and losing your brakes. Do you have any fear for that? And what would you do if that happened?
Well, the bike I had in Europe had disc brakes, so that's a big difference. If you lose your brakes, then there's not much you can do. You just gotta you gotta do one of these and try to slow down the bike. I've never literally had that happen. There was a point I think the start of day 3 in Europe where we literally went downhill nonstop for 9 kilometers without curve after curve after curve. And again, that was with an e-bike with all that weight. I mean, the bike probably was 50 pounds and my bags were another 25 plus me. That was unnerving, right? Even for me, and I've done crazy stuff in the Rockies and Seattle to Portland where it was super hilly. Yeah, you got to be careful. Yeah. That's why I think disc brakes are so good. So.
So many of us have probably biked and are more familiar with the Michigan trails.
Sure.
It's hard to understand how you bike Chicago to Gary on a regular basis. Big city biking. Where do you?
So I ride with a group of guys, anywhere from 3 of us to 6 of us, typically. But there's 11 in the chat. I haven't met a few of them, but and we have a southern route from Lincoln Park to Whiting, Indiana, and it's all bike path. You go through, you go fast through one part of South Chicago, and then you get on other bike paths. So it's unbelievable. Now there's oh, I forgot the name now. There's a bike path around Gary, the Marquette Parkway, that goes around the southern rim of Gary. It's all bike path, and it's really nice. And then it ends up through the new national park there. You know, so you actually cycle through the national park. And then it finishes at Michigan City, but now they've continued that north. And they're still working on it. The plan is to have that bike path go all the way up to Stevensville. You know where that's at. And probably further, because there's bike paths after that too. And so, you know, in a few years, you'll be able to go from Evanston, Illinois, around the rim and up to there, and it's well over 100 miles. Yeah.
Because you had a picture of the shoreline biking, which can be really crowded, right, along the lake, right on the lake.
Yeah,
shore.
so this is what they did when Rahm Emanuel was mayor. He put the squeeze on a couple of these hedge fund guys who donated all this money, and they took the single bike path and made it into two. So you got a bike path and then you got a walker runner path right next to it, or you know, a little bit of ways. And people, for the most part, pretty adhere to that. So it's not bad. Yeah.
Last question,
Yeah.
when you were in the Sleeping Bear area, did you do the Heritage Trail?
Yeah, I was on that. Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah. So, yeah, so, you know, so you know how cool that is in the woods there, right? It's just beautiful, right? And I had, years ago, I had sailed past there with my kids. We actually anchored off of the Manitou Islands there, you know, overnight. It was really cool. But so I wanted to see it. That's why I diverted into it, because I wanted to see it from a bike. And that's when the rain started. It was brutal. Yeah.
More questions? Survey the whole room here. Okay, well, I think John will probably stick around for a few minutes if people want to
I
come
will.
up and ask a question.
Well, like I said, my book is available if you're motivated to pick it up.
Well, let's start with a good round of applause to John McShea.
I do.
Well, we appreciate your coming,
Sure.
and we learned a lot.
It's been a blast, and yeah, that's just find
Okay.
your plan.
Right. Find your gear.
Find your gear. Thanks, everybody.